Welcome to the Calm Cockpit. Today we're talking all things exercise and how we pilots can best use this to develop and maintain physical fitness. We're going to dive into the most common myths about exercise and the most common stumbling blocks that keep us from leveraging the profound benefits of exercise that will keep us flying sharp and safe for decades.
Whether you're a gym rat or struggling to fit exercise into a demanding schedule, or maybe just avoiding it altogether, we'll offer some perspective, research, and proven techniques to help you find your best strategy to develop and maintain your fitness to fly.
The Calm Cockpit podcast starts now.
Onyx 1-2 Mike Oscar, runway 27, clear for takeoff.
Welcome, everyone, to the Calm Cockpit. My name is Gita Brown, and I'm a music and yoga and meditation educator with over 30 years of experience in training people how to use high-performance techniques without adding stress.
And I'm John Niehaus, professional pilot and longtime flight instructor, and as far as this episode is concerned, professional exercise avoider.
I forgot to say I'm also a midlife student pilot. I mean, that's I think the most important and interesting fact. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. So come clean. What is your relationship to exercise, Mr. Professional Pilot? Do you work out? Do you not work out? Where do you stand? Do you like it, hate it?
I work out. No. No, I hate it. I force myself to do it, and I'm sort of the equivalent to exercise that, what do they call it? Serial dieters are, where I get into it for like 2 weeks and then completely lose track of it, eat tons of pizza, and then feel bad about myself, and then go back to exercise again.
This is a cycle we are all very familiar with, even those of us who love to work out, which I think I fall into that category. So I think we're definitely going to dive into that myth and framework or even stumbling block that a lot of people have, that they just don't like it. And I don't blame you. If you don't like doing something, why would you want to do it, especially when you're an adult and you have your own expendable income?
Yeah.
But you know, for me, I've always loved movement. I mean, I took a class called Sounding and Bounding when I was like 6 years old, and I loved it. We literally sounding, it was music, and bounding, we bounded across the room. And that's really, I can trace like my love of movement and how it made me feel to that class. And even then, once I had a music career, I was always doing yoga and always playing tennis and hiking and just kind of into it. So stop me today if I get a little too far onto my yoga exercise nerd land. I'll try to stay off the soapbox, but I thought it would be really cool to kind of address the stumbling blocks that pilots face, no matter if you're flying long haul, or you're a midlife pilot and you're facing those things that I'm facing at 52, issues with my eyes, depth perception is changing. I've got that classic sarcopenia, which means like your muscle mass just starts to go away. It's like so not fair. So wherever you are in that spectrum, kind of going through, I think we have like 8 myths and or stumbling blocks that just most of us face at one point or another in our working out and exercise lives, and see if we can kind of break those apart a little bit. And my hope is that someone listening might get some, inspiration, ideas about how to address it in your own life. But none of this should be taken as like a hard and fast rule because Gita said so or because John said so.
We are not.
I don't know. Are you going to say it? We are not doctors. Yes, I am a licensed yoga for all abilities practitioner, and I also have a lot of background in this. However, always consult your doctor prior to starting any exercise routine. This is for informational purposes to inspire you. So this is going to be very interesting. So let's start with this myth number 1, which honestly, if this is the only part you listen to like the next 10 minutes, because this is an absolute game changer. And I think is one that is so overlooked. And it speaks to what you were saying, John, which is that most of us think that we have to work out in order to be healthy. We think that we have to do an hour in the gym every day or an hour in the gym 3 times a week or whatever metric you think in order to consider ourselves healthy, in order to consider ourselves at a level of physical fitness. But like, our genes are responsible for 20% of our longevity and also our health, but it's actually 80% of our longevity and health is determined by lifestyle and environment. 80% of your health and longevity is your diet and your lifestyle and your environment. That is a lot that we have control over. And I know it makes John cringe because he's like, oh God, that means I have to do something now. But, we spend like $100 billion annually on diets, exercise program, nutritional supplements, health club memberships. But we all know the stats that people who join the gym in January, by February, the gym is a lot quieter. And by September, something like 90% of those people that signed up in January aren't going to the gym anymore. So I would like to propose a reframe. Let us reframe. And instead of looking at that 1 hour that you spend in the gym, let's instead look at the 23 hours a day that you have and understand that in order to be fit and healthy and to keep flying, we need interventions that will last decades or a lifetime. So the good news is the long-term behaviors and strategies are actually the only ones that are proven to lower your risk of chronic disease and keep you fit and healthy into your elder years. They're going to have a much more profound impact on your ability to continue flying. So have you heard, John, of these concept of the blue zones and then looking at the folks who live in those areas? What do you know about the blue zones?
It's funny. It came up recently in a podcast that I listened to, and it wasn't so much about the health benefits per se. It was that companies are starting to figure out where the blue zones are, and they're starting to like market them in the sense of like, hey, we're going to sell this product and it's from this blue zone, so it must be healthy, like bottled water and all this other stuff. So there's actually some marketing that's going into these blue zones, but I'm sure that's not what you're talking about.
I'm not surprised by the marketing. Yeah, just buy this water from the blue zone and you'll get the benefit of it.
Right.
Without actually doing the work. So the blue zones, they were trying to sort of reverse engineer longevity and to figure out why people in certain areas live to be 100 years old, and not only live to be 100 years old, but also have much better health outcomes all along the way. And I'm going to sort of narrow it down because there's a lot that they looked at with the blue zones, but just looking at exercise, they wanted to look at the principles of how people approached movement and exercise in these areas that help them to live to 100, some of them older than 100, and be really super healthy along the way. Spoiler alert, most of these people did not quote unquote exercise. In fact, the majority of them did not exercise. The majority of them had one key thing in common, which was that every 20 minutes or so, they did something that required them to move their body. That was it. So simple things like kneading their own bread, doing their own yard work, using hand-operated tools. A lot of these places don't have houses full of conveniences like we do here, but however, no matter what, they were nudged into moving their body every 20 minutes, which is so different than a modern Western lifestyle. If anything, we're encouraged to sit for longer and longer periods. So I think it's really actually kind of good news because I personally have found it really easy to sprinkle movement throughout my day and just doing simple things like when I am sitting at my desk writing, I use the Pomodoro method, as mentioned in our study episode, where I work for 25 minutes and have a 5-minute break. So when my alarm goes off, I stand up and I walk across the room. Very often when I'm teaching, I make the opportunity, instead of sitting and teaching, I stand to teach. I know several teachers who use a podium on their desk when they teach, so they're not even tempted to sit down. They just naturally stand all day long. And I've noticed after flight training, I'll go in to do the debrief. And very often I'll sit for a minute or two, and then I have this overwhelming urge to stand up and do my debrief standing up. It's actually not that hard to sprinkle movement throughout the day, but it might take a little bit of mental training along the way or intentionally doing it before it becomes automatic. But what I found is that it feels really good. And when it starts to feel good, then you naturally want to do it more. I want to talk a little bit about the science of like why this works on sort of a biochemical level, because I think it's fascinating. But do you move a lot throughout your day, John? Like, are you kind of like that active, can't sit still person, or do you find yourself just like plopping like a mashed potato?
It kind of depends on the day. It's funny. You talk
Mm.
about the finding excuses to move. And one of my sort of little steps that I try to take is when I'm in a hotel, I will consciously try to take the stairs. So like, if I'm on the 20th floor, then I probably won't, take the stairway all the way, although I have before. But for the most part, a lot of these hotels are probably between 3 and 6 floors, and you don't go up and down all that often. But if you're just coming back from a flight and you haven't really walked that much, or you're just hanging out in the hotel for the day because you got the day to kill, sometimes just going up and down the stairs to get breakfast and back is at least better than nothing. So I do try to find excuses to get up and about. And of course, when I'm home, I try to do sort of more intense type of things. But making use of the free time in a hotel is always something I at least attempt to do. Whether it happens or not is just up for the day.
I think that's really wise to do that. And I think it's one of those things like very often we can hear like we know it's good for us. And so we sort of feel like, oh, I should be moving more. But it just goes again into this vague category and we don't really know why. And that's why I love the information from the Blue Zones, because here are people who are living such robust, happy, and healthy lives. And they are not over there pushing and pulling heavy weights in the gym with their spandex. They're just kind of getting up and walking over to a friend's house or riding a bike there instead of driving a car. They're just naturally moving their body the way it was functioned. They're naturally moving their body the way it was designed to move. And what's so cool, I think, about living in this day and age, in the 21st century, is we have all these really cool scientific tools to actually look down into the cellular level and figure out why this is happening and to give us some underpinning and understanding. And for me anyway, maybe it's just my science nerd showing, but it makes me even more motivated to do it because I feel like it gives this validity and veracity and actually a tangible result I know I'm going to get. I'm not wasting my time doing something just because somebody said so. So there's been several very interesting studies. I'll link them all in the show notes. I'm going to kind of combine two studies. They were both done in JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association. One was looking at walking, one was looking at jogging. But basically, taken together, they took people and they had some subjects exercise 20 minutes before dinner and 20 minutes after dinner. Then they took another group of subjects and they said, you're going to exercise for that hour. You're going to, jog or walk for an hour. And then they took another group of people and they said, okay, you're going to do 2 minutes sprinkled throughout your day. As long as it adds up to 60 minutes total, you're fine. So all of these groups got 60 minutes in a day. One of them got it broken up into like these 20-minute chunks. Sorry, I missed the math. There was another one. Another one they did before and after lunch and then before dinner, that first group. So 60 minutes for them. The other group did 60 minutes in one big whack. And then the last group did 2 minutes sprinkled throughout the day to add up to 60. And the results in both of these extremely robust studies, those people who did the smallest 2-minute chunks were metabolically healthier than the other two groups. I was like, hooray, 2 minutes sprinkled throughout the day, but to add up to 60 minutes. So do the math. That would be 30 times, which is kind of a lot they had to remind themselves to move for 2 minutes. However, they were metabolically healthy. So they were looking at measures like blood sugar, glucose in the bloodstream, which we know is a marker of inflammation and a precursor for type 2 diabetes, et cetera, et cetera. So when they're talking about that metabolic health, that was one of the measures they looked at. If you want a science nerd on it, you can read the studies. I'll link them down there. But here's what's so interesting. Movement is actually medicine. Movement is vital to our functioning. When we move, You could think about it like our cells. I don't know how much you know about biology. Oh, John, you said you slept through chemistry in high school, right?
Mostly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you said that in your sleep episode. Well, it is coming back to haunt you now because you have to sit and listen to this and you can't fall asleep. So, our cells, on the surface of them, they can create these little channels. Okay. And when we move, that stimulates our cells to open up a channel that allows glucose, which is, think of it as blood sugar, to flow into the cell, which the mitochondria of the cell then use to create power. Movement is a key component of what stimulates the cell to open that channel to get that glucose out of the bloodstream and into the cell to power the cell and to power our movement and our other cellular activities. With less movement, those channels in the cell are not opening as frequently. So you have this in like the 60-minute exercisers, they would have this big dump then of glucose from the bloodstream into the cell. And the cell has to do all this work to keep up with it, and all this work and all this work and all this work. And then boom, it shuts off again and the cells go back into this state. And then gradually the blood sugar builds up in the bloodstream again, instead of giving the cells this natural little snack and then another little snack, and keeping that blood sugar level very consistent and level over the whole entire day, which is actually how our biology was designed to function. Biochemically, we need to move to stay healthy and regulated. What I find interesting as a yoga teacher is our lymphatic system also has a pump of movement, and our synovial fluid has a pump, so which is movement. So, our heart pumps our blood. I think you know at least that much,
I
right,
do.
John? Okay,
Yes.
okay. Phew. Okay, so your lymphatic system, like when you go to the doctor and they feel if your lymph nodes are swollen.
Hmm.
Have you had that happen? Okay, and you also have lymph nodes in the armpits as well. Those are part of the immune system functioning. I'll keep a very long story short and just leave it there. But our lymphatic system does not have a pump like the heart does. Movement is actually the pump that gets that lymph fluid to drain naturally, which is part of how it helps to stimulate a healthy immune system. Same with synovial fluid, which is kind of like a grease that is in between all of your joints, helps cushion the joints, helps keep pain from arthritis away. Your synovial fluid does not get pumped in your joints unless you move them. So if you have arthritis, if you have creaky knees, if you have been sitting in the cockpit of an airline for 25 years and you're starting to have low back issues or sciatica, you need to get moving so that that synovial fluid can get into the joints, lubricate them, and help you to feel better. So our bodies on a biochemical level are programmed to need movement. And if you move just 2 minutes sprinkled throughout your day to add up to 60 minutes, you'll be metabolically healthier than you were before. Isn't that great news?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it definitely leads to a lot of the fads that you've been seeing lately, where there's just a lot of people emphasizing walking. And I don't
Yes.
use fads as a negative term in this case. Everybody's talking about walking right now, and how, you don't have to run to get exercise. And in some cases, walking can get you a healthier lifestyle and sometimes even more physically fit than actually going for a run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's way less impact on the joints. Most people can do it given different ambulatory conditions, of course, but there's actually some more research on that. Another JAMA study, they had 2,000 participants. They followed them for 10 years. They were ages 30 through 50, so kind of my demographic and your demographic. So they had adults who took about 7,000 steps a day compared to those who took fewer than 7,000 steps a day. Those adults that took 7,000 steps a day had a 50 to 70% lower risk of mortality. 50 to 70% lower risk of mortality taking 7,000 steps a day versus taking less than that. That is huge. They did another study, another place. I'll link both of these in the show notes. And they found that higher step volumes of 8,000 to 12,000 were associated to a 50 to 65% reduction in risk of mortality compared with folks who only got 4,000 steps a day. So, absolutely, movement is medicine. Your cellular respiration needs it, your mitochondria need it, your synovial fluid needs it, your lymph fluid needs it, your mental health needs it, your cardiovascular system needs it. So, John, you're actually like super wise to just like take the stairs. And like next time you do that, like think about all of those cellular processes that are going on just because you said, I'm going to walk a couple of flights. Your body knows what to do with that information and instantly starts literally producing more energy, which is why very often you see people who work out, they tend to be those people who have energy, right?
It's true. I mean,
So,
and that lends credence to the idea that on those days where you just, maybe it's a bad
yeah,
weather day, maybe it's cold outside. Again, in my case, maybe you're stuck in a hotel room with nothing to do and you just sit around all day. You just feel gross. Like just,
right?
I don't feel energized and good as you normally would, even, to your point, just going out for a walk.
Yeah. Once you start doing this kind of movement throughout your day, you feel the results and you want to do more of it. So, how can you take this sort of myth number one that you have to exercise all the time and now you know that's a myth, you don't have to, you can sprinkle it throughout your day? As John said, you can even start to think and plan ahead. If you do have that destination, check out if they have a gym, check out if they have a treadmill. Do they have walking trails nearby? Is there a mall? If the weather is going to be crappy, is there a mall that you can go to? Be a mall walker. Go ahead, do it. Whatever it takes to get that movement in because it will feel good and your cells will be happy. So let's move on. Myth number two, I don't have time. Didn't we just kind of take care of that one? Is this one that you ever struggle with? Just to go, I don't have time to work out. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I think that's an excuse we all use. The worst one is when you say that and you know that you're actually lying.
Oh, it's
So
so,
you're
it
like, I
actually
don't
kind of
have
hurts a little
time.
bit.
And then you spend 45 minutes scrolling on Facebook or whatever social media platform you use. And you're just like, I did have the time. Now I don't because I just wasted it.
Yep. I've literally sometimes even caught myself saying, like, I don't have time. Or for me, it's not so much time. It's like, I don't have the energy to do it. I'm too tired. But then I will find myself doing something knuckleheaded like that, being on social media or reading some drama in the news that's just, going way too far down the rabbit hole of a comment section or something. And half of my brain is engaged with the nonsense I'm reading. The other half is going, you could be doing so many other things right now that would feel better. It's like, what do they say? You got the devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other.
Mm-hmm.
So the best way that I've found to sort of overcome this in myself, I'm not always successful at it, but it's really helped, is to decide ahead of time what I actually want out of life. I know it sounds like a little meta, but just doing exercise, and I do like to go to the gym, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but just doing exercise, or in my case, a meditation, because I should, because it's going to help me be healthy, is not enough of a motivation. I need something else to like get me going. So I actually have decided ahead of time, like, what is my mission for life? It's something that Tammy Barlett mentioned. Remember that episode we did with her when she said, find out what what did she call it? Not your core principles are, your core values. She said, find out what your core values are because that's going to determine a lot of your decisions. This is along lines of what she mentioned in that episode, is deciding ahead of time how I want to feel and how I want to show up. And I think I want to feel ease and joy. Like, those are my keywords. I want to feel ease and joy. Whereas I think if I just said I should do it because it's good for me, I wouldn't. How do you trick yourself into working out when you feel like I don't have time, especially when you're on the road?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the easy answer is every mile on the treadmill is another slice of pizza I can eat. So
Yeah, I used to do that one too. I used to literally work out in my 20s and be like, ooh, I can have Oreos later. And now I look at that, I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking?
and it's hard. And I do like the idea that you don't have to exercise all day long to get effects. I was telling you earlier that one of the things that actually got me into doing a little bit more structured exercise is actually an app called Daily Burn. And they caught me because the intro to a lot of their programs is start with what they call the 15 DB15, I think is what they call it, daily burn 15. And, do this set of exercises. There, each of them are 15 minutes long, and do it for a period of time. And it's sort of your introduction to actually getting you to want more. And so to know that that's not just a marketing tagline, that 15 minutes actually does, do something for you. Plus it saves you a bunch of money on car insurance. Um, it makes a difference. It makes me feel like I'm actually kind of trending in the right direction.
You absolutely are. It will become ever more important to pay attention to this kind of stuff because what you've gotten away with, maybe you will continue to get away with some of it, but we know that time waits for no one and that hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes, decline of eyesight, blood getting thicker, sarcopenia, which is the muscle loss happening as you get older, it happens to every single person. Even if you were already like, the guru of all things strength and fitness, it would still come for you. So there's no time like the present to start making changes. And there's so much research showing that even beginning a moderate weight training regime in your 70s and 80s that you can still build muscle at any age. So it is never too late. So if you're one of those, we're in the I don't have time camp. If you're one of those also, I don't have time and it's too late for me, neither one of those is true. You can do short bits of activity sprinkled throughout your day. And there goes your whole myth that you don't have time. If you want to get into some of these things, we're going to go in with strength training and some mind body things in a moment. Sure, you can make more time for that, but start where you are. Add something simple and doable for your life that you will be consistent with, like you said, with that 15 minutes. And then over time, that 15 minutes then becomes easy and you naturally start to want to do a little bit more. But if you turn off this episode, you're like, I'm going to work out for an hour, 4 days a week, blah, blah, blah. You'll sustain it, sure, for a few weeks, but sooner or later, you're going to fall off of that. So keep it simple. And that is actually going to have a profound effect.
Well, and I think for me, one of the other drivers to this is actually the entire point of the Calm Cockpit to begin with. When you're trying to figure out, okay, where's the edge? What's the reason why I'm going to do this? It's to do better overall, because there is that study that shows that your mental performance does increase, your retention, your memory, your focus. And so as I have gone on my personal journey to figure out ways of making recurrent easier, studying easier, retaining the information that, as I've said multiple times, like every time I cram it into one side of my head, it just sort of flows out the other. So I want that advantage. Why are we talking about this today? We're talking about it because we promised that we would provide actionable steps to make you better and make you retain information better, mental performance training. And this is exactly that. There is a physical aspect of having that kind of increased performance.
Absolutely. Our brain is not just floating in a test tube somewhere.
But wouldn't
It
that
lives
be
in
cool?
a What's
I
that?
said, wouldn't that be cool?
Wouldn't that be cool? It's this biodynamic thing. It's all connected. So that is actually a perfect segue into another myth, which is myth number 3, in case you were counting, which is that this mind body stuff doesn't work or it doesn't work for me. So what you were just saying about that, I want to have that better training, I want to have, or better attention while training, is exactly one of the key components that we train in the mind-body field. Now, my particular area of expertise is yoga. I'm also very close to finishing what has turned out to be an almost 7-year training in Qigong. For those of you who know, Qigong is a Taoist longevity practice from China and very closely related to Tai Chi. So very similar type thing. I'll just leave it in that very small nutshell. But the core of my work is done in yoga. And one of the main things that we train attention in yoga from the very first scriptures is that before you can even meditate, which is to be completely focused on one point of awareness without any distraction, you have to train concentration. But before you can train concentration, you have to train your body how to sit in a proper, what they call seat, so that your concentration won't be too sluggish. like you were talking about in the hotel room where you're like, bleh, or you also won't be too wired. It is one of the foundational trainings we have about how to literally stand and sit. And I train this with my high schoolers all the time because they come in and they sit on the floor in particular and they look like letter C's. Their spines are completely collapsed. I mean, they're like flump. And I'm like, hey guys, are you tired? They're like, yeah, it's Friday. We're so done with this week. I'm like, did you know that if you sit in that slumped position, you're only producing more fatigue for your body? If you actually learn how to sit and learn how to get your skeletal system to sit how it's designed, your muscles will be able to relax over your skeleton and you will feel more alert and awake. And they're all kind of like, really? I'm like, let's try it. So we go through our training. Now I can tell you that we have finally found, well, I say we, it's not like I did the research. Modern neuroscientists, way smarter and with way more funding than me, have found out why this works. And one aspect of how mind-body training can help you as a pilot to be more alert, and it has to do with posture. So Dr. Peter Strick has actually mapped the adrenal action that helps to activate our awareness. So, we got kidneys in the mid back there, and on top of the kidneys sit these adrenal glands. Have you heard of those guys?
Mm-hmm.
So the adrenal glands, hey, we like adrenaline. It gives us a nice, alert, awake feeling. When you're coming into land at your max crosswind limit, you bet those adrenals are pumping for you. Too much of it can be a detriment, but you want just enough of it so you have attention. He was actually able to map how this chain works in the body. So when we have certain areas of the motor cortex, which is just saying that part of your brain responsible for moving, when this certain chain happens, we have more alertness. So here's what happens. When you sit in that nice, tall yoga position, sits bones are well rooted, the spine is long, the core is maybe slightly engaged, the top of the head is raised, you're sitting tall and long yet relaxed. Your core becomes engaged naturally to help you sit. That in turn stimulates your vagus nerve, which connects your brain and your gut. That in turn stimulates the release of adrenaline, which then stimulates the brain to release noradrenaline. This noradrenaline makes us feel more alert and leads to better performance in learning and doing just about anything that you want to do. So a simple activation of your core by sitting up tall or doing planks, if you know those, literally makes you more alert and more awake. And we can look back in our human history at all of the texts from the Taoist longevity masters back through the yoga masters going 3,500 years is the earliest recording of this. They were reporting, if you want to sit and concentrate, the first thing you need to do is align your seated posture so you are tall and long and get out of the slump and you will have more alertness. And now we can just map biochemically in the body how that happens. So John, you have great posture now, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it was funny because the moment you started talking about your high school students, I was like, oh shoot, I'm slouching. I need to fix it. Now, two funny things. I do love when I find out that things I am falling backwards into are actually things I should do. So it that's a good thing. So It's funny, the vanity kicked in one picture that I saw of myself where I was like, man, I slouch really bad. So a couple of years ago, I actually got one of those like shoulder straps that you wear where you're supposed to wear it for like 15 minutes a day or something like that. And it goes over and then you sort of tighten them up and it pulls your shoulders back. And
John,
it does make you feel better. It does. But, to bring this all back to flying, it's funny because when I fly, I actually do sit very straight up and down, especially for takeoff and landing. And I never really, it wasn't that I did it on purpose. It just kind of was what I became used to or what I felt comfortable. And relating your information to sort of what I was naturally doing, I can't help but think that maybe there is sort of that sort of natural awareness that I didn't realize I was doing it for that reason, but it's possible that maybe, it does allow for that larger veil of attention to increase my capabilities on takeoff and landing. So, I'm gonna call that a win for me.
I call that a huge win.
But I really do feel like it helps. And it's funny because the pilots that I fly with can always tell when I was the last one in the seat because none of them sit straight vertically up and down. And so they always grow and like, man, can't you just slide this thing back a little bit before you get out of the seat? It's interesting to hear how that relates.
That is exactly why I love to share these kind of tidbits, because you're having the same reaction that the majority of my students have. They're like, oh, wow. So I was really on to something there. And then it encourages them to do it more, because having that sort of social support and intellectual knowledge is fabulous. Because we can very easily doubt ourselves with a lot of this. But I think you're giving a really great point to when people say this mind body stuff either doesn't work or doesn't work for me or won't work. That's my favorite. It won't work for me. Like, well, have you tried it? Like, how would you know? But here's the deal. Most people say that famous thing, listen to your body. Have you ever heard that? Like,
Yes.
how will you know you've gone too far? Listen to your body.
But what happens if your body gives you bad advice?
Or what happens if you haven't trained the skill of listening to your body? Like, what does that even mean? Most people, most students I have no ability to listen to their body, but they think they are. And this is a real danger. What they're actually listening to is that what their mind thinks they either want to hear or what they're denying that they hear. So, quick example, I'll have a student come in. I'm assessing that for this would be for therapeutic yoga. I see them walk in. I'm like, wow, they're having massive issues with their hips. Okay. I get their intake. We're talking. They mention the hips. Not at all. They talk about their back, their leg, the this, the that. And I'm sitting there going, so they haven't even gotten awareness yet that this is actually a hip issue. Okay. So it's fine. I don't say anything, but gradually we start doing the practices. We go through things. 3 to 4 months later, once they've trained in the ability to observe themselves with neutral compassion, which is one of the core components that we train in yoga, being able to observe yourself from above, kind of like a scientist looking down and saying, what's actually happening there? The student comes to me and says, I think it actually might be my hip that's bothering me. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let's explore some techniques for that and then see how you feel. And then things can kind of unstick from that point. But me just telling the student, hey, that's actually your hip that's all messed up, isn't going to actually help them to make that mind-body connection, even to feel and internalize that learning for themselves. So part of this mind-body training is to take those cues like you had in the cockpit and be like, actually notice what you're doing and notice how you feel, but from a more neutral place. And that's why things like yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, certain forms of traditional dance, martial arts are all so helpful, because the majority of them have a component where you are actively observing yourself more neutrally, which is very different than a Western workout, which is grind through discomfort and push through to try to get some type of hypertrophy, muscle growth. Very different kind of training. And when we develop that ability to see ourselves more objectively, that's when that mind-body connection is really strong. And then listening to your body becomes accurate rather than just what you wish was happening or what you're trying to deny is happening, or you're just not even aware of happening. It's a skill that absolutely needs to be trained, trained, trained. And if you haven't trained in it yet, find a great Pilates, yoga, Tai Chi, martial arts, something you like doing that has that component. It will help you to leverage all of your movement that you're doing and all the exercise you're doing so that it meets your needs, not just the needs of what you think you should be doing. And it is an absolute game changer for health outcomes. So I got a couple more little myths here. And this next one is a doozy. And I'm especially looking at future John in this one. When you're 40 and 50 and 60, and I'm really speaking now to my middle-aged pilots and my elder senior pilots. So we know that one of the leading causes of death for women is actually cardiovascular disease. And we also know that type 2 diabetes is at an extremely high rate, and similar to with hypertension among men as well, high blood pressure. And these are often start to really spike in the 40s, but especially 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. It is very common for people to be on multiple medications for hypertension and have heart disease. And boy, nothing will make me more uncomfortable going into a medical than knowing I have high blood pressure. I mean, that's just, we're talking about strokes, we're talking about issues with your eyesight being affected by that. Oh my goodness, we're talking about heart attack, not to mention just not being able to fly. How about not being able to live and to just enjoy being on this beautiful planet? So I do believe that medical intervention is extremely important, that working with your doctor is crucial, that being on medication is absolutely crucial. And I have family members who are alive today due to high blood pressure medication. In addition to that, this is one of those very easy things that we know if you do the proper form of exercise, if you reduce your stress, if you eat well, and if you have more love, which is to say more social connection, that we can reverse the progression of these most common and chronic diseases. There is ample research. I'm going to link it all in the show notes to the wonderful work of Dr. Dean Ornish, who's a medical doctor. He worked in collaboration with Harvard and the University of California, lots of other leading academic institutions. He has so many studies done in peer-reviewed journals where he has done simple, low-cost strategies of eating particular types of food, stress reduction techniques, social support, and movement, which is largely based on yoga practices that has been shown to reverse heart disease. Here is a quote that I think really speaks to the power of these simple interventions that I think every pilot needs to seriously consider adding into their pre-flight and just lifestyle regimen. This quote is from the editor-in-chief of the Journal of the Medical Association Internal Medicine Journal. So she says, quote, "If you want to see what medicine will be like 10 years from now, read this book today." She's talking about the book Undo, where he talks about a lot of this work. One of the former Surgeon Generals of the United States said that his work is so elegant and simple that it deserves a Nobel Prize since it can change the world. Medicare, Aetna, and Blue Shield of California actually cover these interventions now because they have found to be so effective. And we all know how expensive it is to get a bypass and how traumatic to the body. And wouldn't it be great if you could do simple, low-cost interventions out of your own home that you knew were going to help keep you off of that high blood pressure medication or greatly reduce it, keep you flying, keep you also healthy and happy to enjoy your lifestyle. So I don't want to bring it down too much, but very simple things can make profound changes. So don't think you have to go balls to the wall at the gym. You can do very simple things, and it's shown now can have tremendous health outcomes. That gives me a lot of hope for the future when I see stuff like that being actually paid for by insurance. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and anything that lets you succeed on that pilot medical, especially for those of us that use it to make a living. I mean, that's hugely important. And we've all heard of those that have had medical events that have resulted in loss of medicals. And it's not to say that they can't be reinstated. However, in a lot of cases, after events like those, it takes sometimes years, sometimes oodles and oodles of money to make the FAA reverse the decision to revoke your medical. And so, just like studying and all the stuff that we've talked about on getting that edge, like anything that I can do to make sure that my next medical is successful so that I can continue to, provide for my family is hugely important. Not to mention the expense of pharmaceuticals in general. I mean, you want to talk about why would you do this? Well, if a simple walk a day keeps you, maybe not off the medication, but maybe it allows you to get to a point where instead of 2 pills a day, you can take 1. Well, I mean, at that point alone, you're saving a ton of money. So yeah, there's large benefits selfishly from a societal standpoint, but also from a bodily standpoint.
Absolutely. And I have been so encouraged to see a lot of this stuff getting more of that like mainstream attention. And this is where I can also say too that never despair. It is not too late, no matter where you are on the health spectrum, no matter where you are in the exercise spectrum. There's always small changes you can make to really drastically change not only your health outcomes, but also your strength, your cardiovascular fitness. And all the information is out there. And what we're trying to do through this podcast is give you sort of that curated list of like the best of the best that has been really shown over time to really produce those outcomes, because we want you to keep your medical. We want you to keep flying. We want you to be there to see your grandkids and take them up on a flight with you. This stuff really does matter. This work isn't like the extra stuff you should do. It's the thing you do before you do the flight so that you can fly. And I mean, obviously, I'm a huge like movement nerd, so I love talking about this stuff all day long. Okay, so let's talk strength. I want to go to strength for a minute. This can get really sticky, and I see a future episode just on strength training alone because it's a huge topic. But two sticking points for strength. Number one is I either see people who are like the gym rat who work out cray-cray. Like they are just like, they are so obsessed with their workouts. It's like if they miss one, they go a little nutty.
Not that there's anything wrong with that for those of you that love it.
Well, I have a few things to actually say about that. Moderation. Or you're someone who's like, I don't like to go to the gym at all. Like, I don't want to lift weights. I don't want to have muscles. So, in a nutshell, muscle is tied to longevity. Muscle is tied to longevity. Muscle, as we showed earlier with the mind-body connection, is also going to be deeply connected to your neuromuscular patterns, how you move in the cockpit, how you conduct your pre-flight walk around. It is also going to be tied to your ability to stay alert and remain alert, because your neuromuscular system is going to be more primed to make use of the energy that is in your body in a more effective manner. Training strength is one of the best things that I could ever recommend. If there's two things I would say out of this episode, three things I'll say out of this episode. One would be to just create a lifestyle where you're kind of moving throughout the day. Number two would be to do some kind of mind-body training so you can observe yourself in a more neutral place. Number three would be this point right here. Figure out how to start training muscle strength. Now, I'm not talking about being like, who's the big guy? Oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Not talking about that. Not talking about like going like heavy at the gym and doing all this stuff. What we're talking about here is thinking about your muscles and your nervous system kind of being like this connection between the hardware and the software. So your muscles and your nervous system work together in that manner. And when you learn how to access your strength in intentional ways, you become stronger and healthier no matter what you're doing. So, John, tell me if this sounds familiar to you. I think you're of this generation that this was still like a thing. The way they a lot of times talk about lifting weights is you go in and you lift to failure, which then forces the muscle to create an adaptation because it's been stressed, and you rest. And while you're resting, that muscle grows. And then you go back to the gym and you do it again. If you heard that method, train to failure, it forces the muscle to grow, then you rest, you get bigger muscles, then you go back and you do it again.
I'd say that's what they taught us in high school. That's probably true.
Yeah. We have so much evidence to prove now that muscle size has very little correlation with muscle strength. If you want to get way into this, start to look at the work of Pavel Tsatsouline. He's a world-renowned strength and conditioning coach. He used to do the military special forces training. He's the person who brought kettlebells to the United States. He is a walking encyclopedia of fitness. And he has this very low-tech, high-concept method of training. His website is Strong First. We'll link it in the show notes. He has 4 excellent books. They're all in his house. Yes, I've read them all. Naked Warrior, Enter the Kettlebell, Power to the People, Simple and Sinister. The man is a genius when it comes to strength training, regardless of if you're a gym rat or if you're like me and I'm just getting a little bit back into training some weights after a long winter of having all kinds of little different illnesses going on and off. So if you follow that old method we were talking about of like lift to failure, that is actually not forcing your nervous system to be strong. You're just forcing the muscles themselves to grow physically bigger, but you're not training that neuromuscular connection. So that initial memory consolidation when you're building strength in your muscles happens just like it did when we did our study episode and we were talking about doing spaced and timed repetition of material. So in that episode, we talked about you're learning a new fact, and then like 2 or 3 days later, you come back and you review that material. And then a week later, you review the material again. You'll remember it a lot better than if you do an hour binge of study and then don't review it again for 3 more weeks. Muscle growth works the same way. If you do one day, you work to like 80% of your capacity, 80% of what you could lift for like 3 sets. In between each set is like 10 minutes of rest. You leave before you ever feel fatigued. You will gain more muscle strength that's available to you when you need it, rather than gaining just bigger muscles. There's like over 1,000 studies that show this to be true. And he's got a new book coming out soon called Grease the Groove is what it's called. And it's all about that you're doing lots of repetitions of something sprinkled throughout the day, doing it before you hit this max failure. So you don't have to go to the gym and like lift heavy to get strong muscles that actually have a great impact on your health. You can sprinkle it throughout your day, or you can do these workouts that he lays out very clearly on his website, where you're never leaving the gym feeling more tired, you're never feeling sore the next day, but you're gaining in that neuromuscular strength as well as muscular strength, which actually is a greater predictor of healthy outcomes and ability to use that strength when you most need it, i.e. in an emergency procedure in an airplane. So, hey, but this isn't actually about like being a musclehead, and I have nothing against muscleheads. My husband is a kind of a strong guy, used to play football, did all of that kind of stuff, and he's been a real role model in all this for me because he's 12 years older than me, and I've seen how he's had to adapt some of his lift heavy at the gym mentality as he's gotten older. And I've really seen, though, that him maintaining that muscle strength has come by him actually working less hard. So he still goes to the gym and lifts weights, but a lot of it's body weight, a lot of it's functional movement. Again, working to that 80% capacity and keeping that meaningful bit of muscle so that you don't just have like, built, but you have it so that you have that great abundant cardiovascular health that you need for life. I think that we should all do what we love, right? If we're looking to sprinkle movement throughout the day and we know that that's super effective, find something you like and do it. You don't have to go to the gym and do Pavel's method that I'm mentioning. You don't have to do yoga just because Gita happens to love yoga. You don't have to run because John loves running. Find what you like to do. You might like to garden. You might like to tinker in your garage. Whatever your passions are, you might have always wanted to do ballroom dancing. It does not matter. Move your body. And because if you're doing something that you love, you'll be much more likely to do it. I'm just going to say one little thing along with this strength training component. It's a little aside shoot, which is that cardiovascular thing. So you said, I do my cardio, I run. That's great. Consider that cardio, we tend to think of heart rate. We want to get the heart rate up because that gets the blood pumping. But also consider for a moment that cardiovascular training is also vascular training. Your entire vascular system goes I don't know if you've ever seen a map of it, goes all throughout the body from the heart to the most distal areas. And as we age, it's those distal areas that start to die first. Our eyes, our fingers, and our toes. That's where we start to lose things first. We lose sensation. We can have different nerve endings dying. We get that tingling pain. We lose strength. We kind of, I hate to say it, but die from like the outside in. If you're looking at cardiovascular strength, you want to keep that vascular system itself really healthy, not just the heart pumping from the run, but you want to be able to direct that blood flow where you most need it, especially to those distal areas of the body, the fingers and the toes. So combining running with something like when you're done running, I have most of my yoga students do a cool down routine that then directs that blood flow intentionally to the fingers, to the feet, to the head. And so they can feel that energy that they created in the run being distributed through the cardiovascular system to all the areas of the body, particularly the fingers and the toes. So that again, that neuromuscular system is working really efficiently because you're pairing it with the mental side. So, but in a nutshell, do what you love. Do what you love. So I think we've gone through most of our myths. Let me scan through. Oh, we have one more. We have one more, which is for pilots, especially who travel a lot, that working out on the road is too complicated, too hard. And we've talked about that sprinkled throughout the episode. John said, take the stairs. And most hotels have even rudimentary gyms, right? You got a treadmill, maybe some free weights. What other stuff have you seen in the gyms? You've got more of a pulse on that than I do.
Yeah, I mean, usually there's a couple treadmills. There's usually either a stepper or a elliptical, and then usually there's one of those kind of weight machine type things. You can tell I do them a lot. I don't know what that's called. Usually I just go in there for the treadmill and make my way out. But yeah, I mean, sometimes there's medicine balls. So you get a good sort of smattering of things, and some of the larger hotels have really nice ones. So yeah, it's enough to at least get you moving, which is cool. And to a point that we made earlier in terms of walking trails, like that's something that is my absolute favorite. Going on a hike, going on a walk somewhere, and you'd be surprised that even in some of the most metropolitan areas, there's actually some decent trails. And so if you've ever used something like All Trails, which is an app, you can go on there and you can just put in your location and find all the trails in the area, and they're usually rated based off of how difficult they might be or whether they're, paved or not paved. I found some really cool stuff. I mean, even in like the middle of Atlanta, where you would figure Atlanta's a pretty big city, there couldn't possibly be nature trails there. There actually is. So there are ways of going out and finding some of these additional opportunities to get out and move on the road. So that's just thinking outside the box. That's what I like to do.
I absolutely love that, because the last place I want to go, honestly, when I'm traveling is a hotel gym. I find them to just be like kind of claustrophobic and blech. I'd rather go outside and work out outside and do some push-ups against a tree, do some squats, do some hip hinges, which is like a deadlift, and just with body weight, and then take a nice walk. And I'm much happier there. And there's also a tremendous amount of research that shows when we're out in nature that counteracts that stress response that our body goes through when we've been traveling or working intensely, like flying an airplane for a long period of time. That again, our body is this biochemical organism that knows how to take those cues of fresh air, sunlight or moonlight or Atlanta streetlight, as the case may be, and knows how to take those cues and turn it into modulating that stress response away from the fight or flight or high active arousal of the nervous system and shift it to a state where it's in a more restful, receptive state, which can lower the impact of chronic stress that has on producing inflammation in the body. And chronic inflammation is what produces chronic disease. And that's what a lot of all this exercise is looking to avoid. So doing something like walking outside not only gives you the health benefits, it's also going to be great for the mental aspect of the game. And then in turn, it improves your biomarkers. And then in turn, it produces your health. And you create a much more healthy cycle. So I think when you're on the road, plan ahead sounds like a fantastic strategy. Check out the hotel you're staying at. We all got the hotel website. Check it out. Actually intentionally think ahead of time, what am I going to do? And make a plan and stick with it, because you know that you'll feel better. So I hope that we've busted a bunch of myths today. Again, the main takeaway would be, do not think that you have to be a gym rat to get the benefits of exercise. Do some mind-body connection stuff so that you can start to observe your body more neutrally and actually be a little bit more objective about what's happening, because that will help inform the choices that you make in exercising. Start considering looking into some weight training, because strength and a neuromuscular level will help improve your attention, your awareness, your ability to outlast everyone else, much more so than many other measures. But above all, pick something you like to do and just do it. Like, keep it simple. Start where you're at. And I hope this is the first episode of many, because as you can see, I could talk about this stuff all day long. I absolutely love it. But I think it's really important to pilots to start to actually think about it in an intentional way and to ride the waves of the different decades of our lives throughout our career, so that we're making choices on that continual basis to promote our health, our longevity, and honestly, just feeling good so we can enjoy it all, because it's a really great thing we get to do. And who wants to be doing it with pain and fatigue? So why not feel great while you're doing it?
Yeah, and small habits make a difference. I mean, there was a pilot that I flew with, and I kept hearing just like little in the plane. I'm like, what is happening? What are you doing? And I finally realized it was the pilot next to me, and I did ask him, and he says, "Oh, occasionally I just pump the brakes on the rudders." I'm like, "Why?" And he goes, "Because if I pump the brakes on the rudders, I'm circulating blood through my legs, which helps, reduce the amount of potential for blood clots and things like that for sitting so long. You can also position the seat so that you're not compressing your legs so much." So those little habits, if it's something that you do occasionally but purposefully, can make a huge difference.
They absolutely do. And I'm the first to know that any conference I go to, if I am in the hallway and I start just doing a big, wide open stretch, arms over the head, I just do a little stretch, you will be amazed. All these people near me, they go, "Oh, that looks like it feels so good." And before you know it, it's monkey see, monkey do. And people near me they're all stretching and opening up, doing a little twist rotation in the chair, circling the wrists, circling the ankles is all enormously important. Your body knows what to do with that movement. So why not sprinkle it throughout the day and feel good?
Couldn't agree
Okay,
more.
everybody. Time to go exercise. I don't know, maybe listen to another episode of us and go take a walk. No, don't listen to anything on a walk. Just listen to Mother Nature. She's a much better soundtrack than anything we could do. So I think with that, we're going to call our episode on exercise a wrap.
I think so. And we'd love to hear what you guys do on the road. And, if it's not daily burn like me, what else is out there? Maybe you'll give me a good idea on something I should be doing on a layover or an overnight or whatever that might be. So feel free to email us at calmcockpit@gmail.com. You can find us on social media, any of the platforms pretty much. Calm Cockpit, sometimes Calm Cockpit Podcast, depending on the thing, but you'll find us. And with that, fly smarter.
And stress less.
Our one departure is Airbus 321. Traffic holding crossing runway 33 left 3 lane.